He walks these halls with steps like dripping water. His bloated hands are as purple as rot in dark places. He passes through the walls with the damp and chilly air. If I die in here, it wasn't sickness. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't suicide. It was him. The note was stuck on the bottom of the bed. I only found it because I was looking for a way to rip a piece off the frame to hurt myself with. I was going through a very dark time in my life, and it was about to get darker. I'd been admitted to the Pine Hill Mental Hospital after my breakdown in mid-January, but I suspected that it always felt like winter at Pinehurst. The corridors were cold and drafty, and the thick, dusty windows made the skies outside seem perpetually gray. With their stressed expressions and exhausted, shambling walk, it was hard to tell the staff apart from the patients. Pinehurst Mental Hospital was a place where society dumped the people it was ashamed of, then conveniently forgot them. I couldn't have said why I kept this odd little note. It felt like a good luck charm, or at least a reminder that somebody out there had been crazier than I was. Until the night I was woken by a strange sound like dripping water. I sat up in the blue darkness, listening as it passed by my door and entered the room next door. It took my sleep-addled brain a moment to realize what was so wrong about that fact. The door had never opened. Whatever it was just suddenly inside the room next door. The walls in Pine Hill were thick stone, but noise traveled in the place, like the man across the hall who'd laughed for days straight until his throat was so raw that he fell silent, or the old woman to my left who moaned in her sleep. But from the room to my right, I'd barely heard a sound. Until now. "Hello?" a husky voice asked. "Who are you?" Drip, drip. Silence. "What are you doing in my room?" Tiredness had been replaced by fear. "Hey, say something!" There was no reply but the echo of droplets hitting the floor. Then, the strangling sounds began. It was like the person in the room beside me was choking on their own tongue. I frantically pressed the panic button with no result, but the desperate clicking of plastic. Drip. No more noise came from the adjacent room, but I had an awful feeling something was listening. I let go of the panic button and shut my eyes tight. I woke to the squeaky wheels of a gurney. A body was being removed from the room beside me. If I die in here, it wasn't sickness. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't suicide. He passes through the walls with the damp and chilly air. His bloated hands are as purple as rot in dark places. He walks these halls with steps like dripping water. "God, I hate this month," an orderly grumbled from the hallway. "Why'd you think they always punch their ticket in February, huh?" "Fuck if I know," his partner snorted. "Nasty, dreary weather, no holidays. Start of another miserable goddamn year. Take your pick." My heart was racing. Had I just hallucinated the awful events of the night? Or was there something more to the note I found under my bed? As I waited for my session with the chief psychiatrist, Dr. Harlow, I wondered which was more terrifying, not being able to trust my own mind or whatever haunted the halls of Pine Hill Mental Hospital. Dr. Harlow was a white-bearded, muscular man who reeked of optimism and clean living. Up close, I would have sworn that he smelled like the organic vegetables section of the supermarket. He shook my hand and flashed a bright smile before our session. Considering how gloomy the hospital was, I wondered how he pulled it off. The man's cheerfulness bordered on the delusional, but he didn't miss a trick. "We've been talking about the events that led to your admission to Pine Hill, but you seem distracted. How are you adjusting to your stay here?" "It's a big change," I admitted. "I was always the strong one, the one who never complained, and I guess I Just never imagined that I could end up here. We each have our own cross to bear. Dr. Harlow smiled and tapped the rim of his wheelchair. Often it's not the one that we would have expected. He didn't sound like he bought my story. Looking at the metal cage around his leg, I wondered what had happened to the guy. If anything bothers you during your time with us, Dr. Harlow went on, remember that I'm always listening. It was only later, back behind the locked door of my room, that the good doctor's final comment might have meant more than it seemed. Dr. Harlow held the keys to my freedom from Pine Hill, but as long as I was there, I had bigger problems, like Big Bill. Big Bill was a huge nurse who seemed to take my mental illness personally. I didn't know whether I reminded him of someone he hated or he just didn't like my face, but whatever it was, he seemed to enjoy making me hurt. When he drew blood, I watched him smile evilly as he missed vein after vein on purpose. He'd rough-handle and shoulder-check me every chance he got, and I wasn't the only one. He left a scrawny teenager locked naked in the shower room until his lips turned blue and he was shivering too much to stand. When I complained to Nurse Avery, one of the kindest orderlies, she just sighed. Big Bill's the nephew of some board member or other. Even the psychiatrist can't stand the guy, but there's nothing we can do. The scrawny teenager approached us, shamelessly eavesdropping on our conversation. Can I help you, Harrison? Avery rolled her eyes at him. Yeah, the teenager sniffed. Actually, I think you can. You do the schedules, right? That's very perceptive of you. Avery nodded. Can you put Big Bill on the night shift? I guess I could. I'd probably catch hell for it, though. And are you sure you want to risk being alone with that guy at night? I mean, even during the day, the rest of us can barely hold him back. Just a week or two. That's all I ask. By then, I'm sure Bill's board member uncle will have blown up at you, and you have to apologize to those scumbags, but it would mean the world to me. I don't want to make an enemy out of Big Bill. Avery hesitated. Come on, Harrison begged. He pulled up his shirt to reveal a series of hideous purple bruises. Please. I knew Big Bill had found out about the shift change when I heard him roar and kick the crutches out from under the legs of the nearest patient. Harrison smirked. I didn't know what he was playing at, but as I rubbed the jab wounds in my arms, I hoped it worked. As cruel as Big Bill could be, I didn't envy him for his nighttime patrols. Even before I discovered the note, Pine Hill had struck me as an uniquely eerie place, especially after dark. The 100-year-old building creaked and groaned as it shed its renovations, and when the cold fluorescent lights flickered, it was easy to see things that weren't there. Big Bill whistled nervously as he completed his rounds, pausing only to make a single statement. When I find out which of you nutjobs is responsible for this, you're gonna wish you were never born. It happened 4 nights later. The fierce wind that had blown all day and the power had already gone out twice. The emergency lights worked, but it was dim. The wails and gibbering of some of my fellow patients when the lights went out made me think of a Bible verse from my youth. He will cast into the outer darkness, where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. It was driving Big Bill nuts. Shut up. Shut up! I could hear him beating on someone's door with his nightstick. Seconds later, his crazed face appeared in the square plexiglass window in my room. His eyes were wild, his face red from all the screaming. I could see clumps of spit and snot on his brown mustache. What about you, freak? You want some? Or are you gonna off yourself like my little brother? You freaks are all the same. Drip. Drip. It was the same sound as before. It was coming from right behind Big Bill. Through my small window, I watched huge purplish blue fingers coil around his neck. His eyes grew wide with surprise and slid out of focus as he collapsed. The coroner ruled his death a heart attack. The next day, there was a memorial poster in the cafeteria for William Big Bill Coombs, mentor, caregiver, and friend. Harrison was caught scratching the faces off a few of the smiling photos. When the orderlies released him, I took him aside for a hushed conversation. "How'd you know?" I demanded. "Know what?" Harrison scratched his neck and looked away. "Come on, Big Bill. That weird dripping noise? I found the note beneath my bed. About him." Harrison was panicked before I'd even finished speaking. He crouched down, eyes darting all around him as though he expected some awful thing with rotten blue hands to come crawling out of the ceiling tiles. "Shh," Harrison rasped. "He's always listening." The orderlies watched suspiciously. I tried desperately to get Harrison to calm down. I might never have another chance to find out what he knew. "Look, it's daylight. We're in the cafeteria. Lots of people around. He can't hurt you here." I took a deep breath. Who or what is he? I call him the February Man. He always comes around during this month, and when he does, people die. Harrison scratched his neck a lot. Oh, sure, the deaths usually look natural, or at least unexplainable, but they're not. Not at all. Haven't you told anyone? I've been in here 6 different times now. Who's gonna listen to me? Besides, Harrison lowered his voice. I'm afraid I'm next. If I don't get out of here soon. During my session with Dr. Harlow that evening, I pleaded Harrison's case. Don't you think it's possible that being in here hurts people more than it helps them? Like Harrison, for instance. He's convinced there's some murderous ghost haunting Pine Hill, and having to deal with that on top of all the other issues he's facing. I trailed off. We all want Harrison's suffering to end. Dr. Harlow rolled over and squeezed my shoulder kindly. But it isn't going to happen out there. He needs treatment. The doctor stroked the metal cage on his leg thoughtfully. I still appreciate you bringing this to my attention. It's a sign that you're making progress. I may be able to sign your release papers before long. My heart leapt in my chest. The prospect of getting out, of going back to pick up the shattered pieces of my life, was thrilling and terrifying at the same time. Have you heard anything else about this ghost of Harrison? Harrison, well, he calls it the February Man. He says that's when it kills. He says it has rotten purple hands. It can walk through walls. Fascinating. Dr. Harlow chuckled. Well, I suppose I'll have to bring it up with the other patients. We don't want a mass hysteria out of our hands. Come, we need to get you back to your room. It's almost time for lights out. Back in my room, I thought about Harrison. About how he'd been so sure that he was in danger. But how he'd stayed close to me ever since our conversation, like he was scared to be alone. Now he was locked up by himself in a dark room like I was. It was almost time for the February Man to start making his rounds. I shivered, rolled over, and fell into a dreamless sleep. I dreamt of dripping water, then woke to the sound of a squeaky wheel. The gurney. You know what happened to this one? An orderly was asking. He got a hold of some sleeping pills somehow. You know how that little corner of the room, the one where the camera can't quite see? Went back there, took him. They're gonna give us hell for this, his companion complained. I sat up in bed. Harrison. And what about these weird bruises on his neck, though? Let's just say he wasn't very popular with some of the staff. Remember Big Bill? The orderly laughed. My blood ran cold. Big Bill never hit patients where the bruises could be seen, which meant that Harrison's bruises were new. Probably from last night. I remember the final line of the note. If I die here, it wasn't sickness. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't suicide. It was him. The February Man. I know this is going to sound stupid, I told Dr. Harlow during our session that afternoon. But I think Harrison was onto something. The doctor lifted an eyebrow. I mean, I'm not saying it's a ghost or a curse or anything like that, but 3 deaths in 1 month? The winter months are always a rough time for us, Dr. Harlow sighed. Statistics bear out that these months are when excess deaths occur, and while these accidents are unfortunate... Harrison had bruises on his neck, I screamed. And I've been hearing things from the deaths, the weird dripping sounds. Dr. Harrison grabbed his legs until his knuckles turned white, grimacing. These delusions and loss of self-control are a most unsettling sign when regards to your progress. I don't care about my progress. People are dying. I sprang to my feet in a rage. 2 orderlies burst in and dragged me, raving, back to my room. They weren't gentle. Then again, neither was I. The worst part was, Dr. Harlow was right. I had lost control. If I couldn't trust myself to express my emotions without getting violent, how could I trust my memories of what I thought I'd heard stalking the nighttime hallways at Pine Hill? I'd just blown my best shot at freedom, and if these were delusions, they'd probably only get worse the longer I stayed here. They really worked you over, didn't they? Nurse Avery whistled when she peered through my window. Harrison didn't kill himself. You gotta believe me, it was... Shh, I'm on duty tonight. And I wanted to give you this. Glancing over her shoulder, she passed a square plastic remote through the door. This is one of the panic buttons we used back in the day. You're not supposed to have it, so keep it hidden. If anything weird happens tonight, you can call me, okay? I slipped the plastic remote beneath my hospital-issued shirt, too grateful to say thank you. It felt a lot less comforting after lights out. The drafty air blew over me like monstrous breath. Shadows seemed to move in the corners of my room, and then I heard it. Drip, drip. My breath caught in my throat. It was coming from inside the wall. The emergency light and camera on my wall suddenly went dead, and the wall beneath me opened like a hungry mouth. Drip, drip. In what little light reached in from the hall, I saw a pair of large, bluish-purple hands emerge from the blackness. It wasn't the rot of hell. It wasn't the rot of death I was looking at. It was surgical gloves. Drip. It wasn't dripping, I was hearing. It was creaking. The creak of a metal leg brace. Dr. Harlow limped through from the passageway behind the wall. You ended Harrison's suffering by killing him, I gasped. You didn't approve of Big Bill's methods, so you got rid of him, too, and the people in the room beside me. Another lost cause. Like Harrison. Like you. If you can't be cured, you don't deserve to spend your life trapped in your own mind. You deserve mercy. The needle glinted in his blue-gloved hand. I mashed the button Nurse Avery had given me. The plastic clicked, but no sound came. The panic button was old. When was the last time anyone had checked the batteries? Dr. Harlow's leg brace slowed him down. But I knew that if his huge muscular hands got a hold of me, it was over. There was nowhere to run in the tiny room. Footsteps hurried to my door. Surprise replaced ruthlessness on Dr. Harlow's face. He backed away towards the hidden door in the wall. Too slow. Nurse Avery burst through the door with 2 orderlies, who stared at Dr. Harlow with disbelieving eyes. The good doctor had been caught in the act. Between the cover-up, the chaos, and the whirling rumors, Harlow's replacement had a lot in her plate. She spoke to me only twice before signing my release order. I would be leaving Pine Hill Mental Hospital, a changed man, although perhaps not in the way that the February man had intended. I want to remind you guys that I also do narrations over at Chilling. The Chilling app is available for Android, iPhone, and if you'd like to get your hands on the Chilling app and hear myself as well as many other narrators, and they have a whole new setup where you can watch movies on there now, and it's also free to try out with ads now, so you don't have to get a subscription like you used to before. You can actually just get the app, you can start watching on your PC. It's evolved so much since the last time I have updated you guys on this, and sincerely, it's a great place if you want to see more horror, especially if you like horror audio. So strongly suggest you check out the Chilling app. And finally, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. So I want to give a very special thank you to Jordan Humble, Diana Kraus, Disciple, Strategy Wolf Emoji, SullyMan, Brandon Mendoza, BrimstonePandemonium, Caltuna, William Wellington, Scruffy the Janitor, Brenna LaQueda Canizales, Smiley the Psychotic, Djenna, Dante Kinkade, SimbasBloodyMojo, Mephistopheles, CursepoxPrimarch, M, Jesus Cornejo, Yarghoul, VerbalHorror, Amber Clark, J. Kearns, Mike, himbojerry, CrusaderChocobo, Corbin Dallas, Estabine, Seclude, Salty Surprise, Red Shadowcat, Turtleman, Cryolinian, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Dirt Diver 030, Voice of Sand, Psychomel, Melted Lake, Tali Sue, William King, Sashi Suzaku, Croconut 509, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Hades Nephew, Acid System, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, and Corey Kenshin. I really appreciate your support, and I cannot thank you enough. I wish you all the best. Sweet dreams.